So let's see who we have on our panel. First, I'm really thrilled to welcome Peter Geldenhuys from Tomorrow Today. Peter is a tour guide to the future. He has an MBA in technology strategy. He's actually busy with his PhD in innovation management. He's the founder and director of the Institute for Technology Strategy and Innovation, and believes that the only way to predict the future is to create it yourself. Totally agree with that. He's actually currently working on a TV series titled 2025, which we hope to see before 2025. We'd also like to welcome Dr. Ida Munger, who is an integrated medical practitioner and author and a speaker. Her book, Breathe, is really a comprehensive go-to guide for energy management. We know that time management is a myth. What we really need to manage is our energy, especially when so many things are changing around us and there's continuous disruption happening all around us. So Ida's focus is really on wellness, and that's been transformative for many organizations. We have Lynn on our panel as the CEO of KLM Empowered, but also has someone who also feels impacted by the fourth industrial revolution and who'd like to share some experiences with us as well. And finally, let's not forget Pepper SA, who's joined us on the panel as well. So we have a couple of questions that we'd like to put to our panel, and we'll keep it really informal, so who'd ever like to answer first, you're welcome to just grab the mic. We have one mic between the three of you, and Pepper has her own mic. So I'll be asking Pepper some questions as well throughout the experience. Let's start off with the first question, and that is, we know that the fourth industrial revolution is really threatening to alter completely the way we live, the way we work, the way we interact. But I wanted to kind of start with a question that's a little bit closer to home, and that is, how would you say this emerging fourth industrial revolution has affected you, impacted you personally? Who'd like to start us off?
So I'll take the definition of the fourth industrial revolution a bit further.
Yay.
But I think the biggest impact that it has was the use of artificial intelligence in mapping DNA. I did my DNA about 3 years ago. And what's really interesting about DNA analysis is that they take 10,000 people at a university, take them over a longitudinal study of about 10 to 15 years, and see what happens to these individuals. And then if certain things happen to them medically, they then utilize wonderful technology in order to map the DNA to see which type of DNA fragments has an impact on your health and what's the likelihood of that happening. So I'm going to share with you something personal. I realized I've got the ApoE4 allele. For any of you that know what it means that my chance of getting Alzheimer's is approximately between 55 and 90%. That's my chance of getting Alzheimer's. It literally means that you have to realize that you've got 10, 15 years, good years left, or should you accept it or not? Well, you can look at gene editing, but that only helps if you're an unborn baby. So gene editing wouldn't really help at my age. But one of the things you can do is to focus on a field called epigenetics. Epigenetics means that you can change your biome, your microbiome, and thereby change the way in which your DNA can express itself. So literally what it means is that by radically redefining how your microbiome operates and changing your power source from your body from glucose to ketones, you can then alter the chances of you getting Alzheimer's. And this literally means that as your brain then gets overpowered with the amount of glucose in it and the alpha betoids that pack up over time, by changing your diet radically and doing a number of key or making a number of key changes to your lifestyle, your diet specifically, you can then alter what will happen to you in later life. And that's one of the key impacts, what the fourth industrial revolution have done to me. It changed how I look at diet, it changed how I looked at lifestyle, and it will enable me, and I firmly believe, that I will not face this very horrendous disease in years ahead, and that my chance of getting it will be reduced dramatically due to the advances in technology that we've seen in the fourth industrial revolution.
Wow, thanks, Peter. That's fantastic. Biotechnology is definitely one to keep watching, eh? Ila, what about you?
I'm so glad you mentioned this, because it really leads into what I'd like to say around the awareness that technology, biotechnology, has brought to the way I practice and the way I see the body-mind system. And in my journey of practicing integrative medicine, I've explored all kinds of modalities, from ancient wisdom to the science of epigenetics. And really, that journey has taken me to a place that is most simple, and that is most ancient, and that is most primal in us, and that is our own breath. And when we can access the power of our own breathing, we are able to very powerfully and scientifically shift the way that our DNA is expressed.
Amazing.
So I'm really passionate about, in a world that is so complex, to come down to what is most simple, what is most accessible to all of us at any time. And I'm just really excited about the possibilities of understanding the impact of breath on our brain and on our neurobiology in a far more scientific way. And I really believe that through technology we are able to understand this and access this and share the skill with more people. It's something that is our birthright, something we take for granted. And I think that through connectivity, digital connectivity, we can bring something as natural and primal as the breath to so many more people. And I really think this can shift the way that we are operating and shift the place from which we are operating.
Yeah. Wow, that's brilliant. Thank you.
Thanks, Ida. Well, I think there's so much that is really hard-hitting and speaks to all of us, as what Peter said and what Ida said. And this is why it's important. When we come to ourselves, we tend to neglect our own person. We tend to get caught up with technology. We seem to get disconnected from our own selves through technology instead of letting it work for us in what we know and how we can access knowledge. And accessing knowledge with technology and understanding how it can work in our favor means that it gives us more insightfulness to conserve ourselves and keep ourselves healthy. So to do that, we have to engage with experts in the field to be able to bring that and integrate that into our learning space. And if that is the most important thing that we do, then I think that we are ahead of the game. And we've got to stay there. Thank you.
Very nice. Thanks, Lynn. Well, Pepper, I've seen you moving quite a lot, but I can't see or hear you breathing. That's one thing we've got up on them. But what about you? I mean, how's the fourth industrial revolution impacted you personally?
Clayton, I am living it. If I had DNA, I would like yours, Peter. In industries where the demand for a product or service will grow in response to increased productivity, the rise of AI and robotics can turn out to be a boom for the job market, stimulating consumer demand and expanding market size. If you look at the success of Uber and Lyft as one obvious examples, these companies have created a new and larger market for taxi-like services. For myself, I am being used in positions where a human resource can be better used elsewhere to deal with clients' more urgent needs. Take a bank, for example. You now receive a number upon entering the bank, but there is still a human having to explain what you need to do with that number. I can replace the person and they can be upskilled to help at the counter where you often sit and wait because there are too few. So this revolution is giving me opportunities to support humans.
Brilliant. Wouldn't you love it if the person who gave you the number could actually help you instead? Brilliant. Now, what's your take, the three of you, the four of you, what's your take on the fourth industrial revolution as a whole? How do you think it will affect us as society, individuals, and business? I know that's a really broad question, but I'd love to hear from you.
Let's use the medical example. What's really interesting is that the idea that you have to be in a location to experience something, to measure something, to react to someone, all of that's changing. We now live in a hyper-connected world where everything is connected. One of the interesting impacts of this is on healthcare. What is possible right now is that by allowing someone to have a normal watch like this, and after determining if they have a heart ailment, You can, through machine learning, determine when a person, let's say if they have a certain heart ailment and their heart deviates from the normal pattern, and if this happens to a number of people, a pattern or an algorithm then emerges that allows us to predict if someone will get a heart attack in half an hour from now. Now imagine emergency services 2 or 3 years from now, and this technology already exists, where if your heart pattern starts deviating from the norm, within 5 minutes, someone comes and knocks on your door and says, "Hello, Mr. Geldenhuys, please come with us." In 5 minutes, in about 35 minutes, we expect you getting a heart attack. And this means that they will either stop you getting the heart attack, or if you do get the heart attack, you're in the best possible hands if it happens. It literally means that the entire value chain is disrupted. The old model, where the doctors would normally sit at a hospital and wait for someone that had a heart attack to arrive, would now change, proactively stopping you getting the heart attack. And the beauty behind this is that in the past, I had to be close to someone in order to measure their heart rate and measure their vital statistics. Now, with the Internet of Things and hyperconnectivity, you can literally get that information from anywhere. And this literally means that it empowers so many more things, because it changes the business model. It changes when you go to the hospital, before or after you get the heart attack, where you get the heart attack, who's around you, what's the constellation of machines. The entire value chain is now being unbundled. And this is what this fourth industrial revolution will do. It'll move the service economy towards the acts of consumption and not the acts of production. Not about focusing on making things better and more efficient, but rather focusing on changing the entire business model to unlock opportunities that never existed before. And that will be the true nature of the fourth industrial revolution.
Brilliant. It's just so amazing what you can do if you have the right number of sensors, the right kind of computing power to deal with all of that data, and then the right way to analyze it. Absolutely. Ela?
Yeah, I've looked at how wearables have changed our awareness of our subtle physiological cues. Now we are able to test something like heart rate variability, which is really the measurable for resilience. It's a very subtle cue that we didn't even have awareness of a few years ago. And it's directly related to our breathing. We are able to test very easily our EEG brainwave states. And this makes these tests that were only available at a medical facility available to us at any time. The danger, however, is that we are externalizing our awareness to devices. And as empowering as that is, my concern is that we are losing the ability to become more subtly aware of cues that only we have awareness of. We're speaking about what it means to be human, and to intuitively sense what our bodies are asking for, the deeper nourishment on a soul level. I don't believe any device can tell us that. And I just think that there is a risk of losing this ability of tuning into finer signals. And so we have to develop something that I call inner sight. Okay? So it's insight around what we're becoming aware of, insights around the way we're thinking and feeling and behavior patterns, addictive patterns. And so as exciting as the fourth industrial revolution is, for me personally, it's made me more committed to practicing the skill of self-awareness.
Thanks, Ela.
To jump in on being aware of what you feel, very soon your car will be aware of what you feel. So I'm just going to tie up on that. Think of a self-driving car. A self-driving car uses a number of sensors. It can either use LiDAR, light wave, or it can use radar in order to determine what is the cars around it and what's the car's likely to do. Yet, motor vehicles get into accidents. And what you want to do is to reduce the number of accidents. One additional input that they haven't looked at yet in self-driving cars is brain waves. Now imagine putting a small little Bluetooth headset, I know you wouldn't like this, but around your ear that normally records your brainwaves. And the moment you're in a car and you see an accident that's about to happen, your brainwaves will literally change. This will inform the car that from all of the measurements that they take, here's an additional measurement around which they can react in order to create a virtual buffer zone. So that's also going to be part of this fourth industrial revolution, where we are going to use human instinct, human brainwaves, in order to enable us to live in a safer environment. But I imagine you wouldn't really like wearing these things around your ear, but just as an input from an electronic engineer.
Wow, thanks. That's a whole new relationship with your car. No wonder a
very
lot of
personal
guys
one indeed.
name their cars, right?
So I think I'm on the wrong side. I think, Ida, you need to sit this side, please. Okay, so just move over, please. Just please do move over. Okay, so now this is
Lynn is
this is
switching
your
the panel.
visual, everybody. This is your visual. This is KLM Empowered. We sit in between the two. The two, from a very human specialist take on what we need to
Yeah.
do and how we need to breathe and be mindful and be intuitive, to very medical, technical, geared benefit to the fourth industrial revolution. And that's the perfect picture, because if we get comfortable, this is the picture you're going to be seeing in everyday life. It means that we are going to be able to use technology to the best of our ability and to give us the warnings that we need when we need it. But we must never, lose sight of our important intuitiveness. And my team will tell you how intuitive I am. So,
Wow, thanks, Lynn. Make a good sandwich. Brilliant. What about you, Pepper?
Clayton, from a robot's perspective. The fourth industrial revolution is already affecting the way we live. PUA equals 750. How dependent are you on Waze, or Google Maps, or even Google Search? Just today, I was speaking to a couple who have a rule of leaving their phones at the front door when they get home. Because as Peter said, we are hyper-connected. Humans are always looking to make things more effective, faster and easier. This revolution is going to allow them to achieve these goals. I am just not sure what they are going to do then.
Thanks, Pepper. Good insights. Okay, next question. Do you think we're ready, and what do you think we need to do to get ourselves ready? Maybe we can start with you, Pepper.
To be honest, this is the first revolution where South Africa and Africa have a chance to participate in the revolution. They have been late adopters or not even fully caught up with the revolution in the past. As companies embark on their journey toward the fourth industrial revolution, the ones that are willing to bring in new leadership and make the organizational enhancements to power new digital customer relationships will be the ones that rise above the fray. Make sure you don't forget to treat your digital relationships with customers just like you would face-to-face. Thanks.
Remember what I said about those important pillars for organizations, including looking at your digital customer experience. What about the panel? Do you think we're ready?
I don't think we're ready. And I say this because of what I see showing up in my practice.
Mm-hmm.
We have a serious crisis of burnout in our society. And that in itself shows that we are not ready. Mm-hmm. And unless we capacitate ourselves with some inner skills, we will maladapt to the fourth industrial revolution rather than adapt. Mm-hmm. And adaptation is one of the reasons that we are still on this planet. Like every other species, we have the ability to adapt to our environment. But unfortunately, we are maladapting to what we have created as human beings. So we have a responsibility to think about how to craft the new neural pathways to support our greatest human capacities for compassion and for creativity. And beings like Pepper will free up space in our minds, will free up our energy, make more energy available, will make more time available. The question is, what will we do with that energy?
Yeah.
What will we do
Yeah.
with that time?
Yeah.
And so unless we find ways to tap into our greatest source of our humanity and our capacity for creativity, then we will not be ready and we will not survive.
Yeah, and that's crazy because the rate of the technology advancement is so much faster than our ability to keep up in a responsible way. Lynn?
I actually have a question for you. We are speaking about the
Hey,
fourth
who's
industrial.
hosting this panel?
Okay,
Sorry,
excuse
Kidding.
We are in the fourth industrial revolution. We're already there. It's happening. It's all about us. But do you think burnout is because of that, or is it long time coming?
I think it's a combination of both. I think burnout is as a result of unconscious patterns of thinking and behavior and addictions. And I've been speaking a lot about self-awareness. I think that unconscious patterns and externalizing our tasks to external devices creates a state of disconnection. And for me, that's what burnout really is. And I think that's what we need to be careful of, is disconnecting from ourselves in the pursuit of connectivity. So I think it's a long time coming, but I think that the risk that we need to be aware of is technology driving this unconsciousness even further.
Yeah, the kind of always-on mentality. As Pepper mentioned, that phone stacking is a good idea, right? Sometimes.
I found there's a word that we're so accustomed to using that worries me, and it's called love. I don't know if this generation knows what deep love is, because they are so disconnected. So if this fourth industrial revolution is going to keep us more disconnected, as Ela said, and we've seen the benefits of it with Peter, is I have concerns whether we will become so conditioned is that word will no longer exist. And it's deeply concerning, because how do we connect to other human beings when we're so disconnected?
Thanks, Lynn. What about you?
May I take 3 or 4 minutes to get my
Sure.
answer? All right. We anticipate quite a dramatic shift in the world order in the next couple of decades. I'm going to say it out quite briefly. In 1946, the United States started the Bretton Woods Agreement. This was quite simply a structure to allow a huge number of countries, and 48 countries signed up, 46 countries signed up, to say either you choose the Soviets or you choose the US. If you choose the US, we'll give you a security umbrella so that you can trade free and that you can have the freedom of the seas, and through that you can then trade through prosperity. America utilized it for 2 purposes. One, in order to provide energy security so that all the oil could flow into America and that they have energy security. And secondly, that the trade of all of their partners would be free in terms of open seas. 3 fundamental shifts are now taking place. One, if we take America out of the picture and we take a look at developed countries, the number of 25-year-olds will fall by 30% in the next 10 years. This means that the entire engine of the consumption economy will disappear. So if we take a look at 25-year-olds, what do they do? They get kids, they get married, they buy homes, they buy cars, they drive the economy. They literally start this entire journey of the consumption of consumption economy. And what we are seeing is that outside America, 30% fall in that will happen. Now this means that Europe, Japan, they will have aging populations with smaller population that will not be able to fund their retirement. Massive impact on debt, massive impact on, and that's why in Japan they love robots, because they're running out of people. because that's why where robots will come in. In South Africa, we got the opposite. Huge number of 25-year-olds, but they don't have any jobs. So literally, we'll have to redefine a different type of economic system. But two important things will happen. One is that America becomes energy self-sufficient. That means that they're going to withdraw their security umbrella from the world because they can't afford it anymore. Secondly, if you take a look at their import-exports as part of their global gross national product, it's only 11%. Where countries like South Korea and Germany is about 50% of the economy is imports and exports. This simply means that the entire world order as we know it is changing, and this thing means that three things will happen. One, there will be scarcity. Two, there will be a sense of urgency. And three, a shift of perspective. Now, why is this important? If we take a look at all of the innovations of the last 10 years, Uber, Airbnb, all of them emerged out of 2008 when there was a shortage of people that didn't have jobs. There was a shortage of people that said, maybe I can use my home to obtain more revenue by opening up Airbnb. Under an environment of stress, where there's a shortage of resources, a pressure to urgency of some, a sense of urgency, we will then shift our perspective. And existing technologies that exist today will be repurposed in ways that we will not anticipate in years ahead. This will mean that under environment of stress, user patterns will start to change. And if I take a look at your question, are we ready yet? No, we're not, because the technology is there, but we haven't adapted our human systems. Under environment of stress, this will happen if we like it or not. That's my answer.
Thank you. And that's a sobering answer at that, isn't it? Okay. So now if we go back to that kind of slide that I showed at first, looking down that path in the forest, what do you see down that path? What do you think the future holds for us? As far down the path as you want to go.
I think that, particularly here in South Africa, I think that we're really excited to be part of something new, the Industrial Revolution that is upon us. But I also think that it creates so much more opportunity for us to be different in how we apply our minds and how we learn differently to bring new innovations to market. I think that we have an edge sitting right here at the bottom of Africa, that we are ready, maybe not ready for technology, but we're ready and hungry enough to be able to want to bring new innovations to the world of work that we're living in. But we have to be mindful of the importance of conserving ourselves as well. Because there's one thing that you mentioned, Peter, is speed. Everything is at an accelerated pace. Everything is faster. It's bringing more and more and more pressure and tension into our everyday lives. It's making us quite hyper. We are becoming caffeine addicts. But besides caffeine and all these other nemesis in our lives, is that we are becoming addicted to the technology. We're not controlling ourselves enough. So to be able to control ourselves and to see the benefit of it and to let it be the catalyst to our projection out there and our quantum progress, we have to just be mindful not to become too consumed with our personal usage of it and see the benefits of opportunities that it will bring.
Yeah, good balance. Thanks, Lynn.
I'm really excited too, actually. I think that we are in a crisis. I think we're in a great time of chaos. But in that chaos is great opportunity. And I think that as human beings, we have such incredible capacity to change our brains, to change our body-mind systems, to craft new neural pathways. We have the ability to do this easily and quickly if we are able to put the right structures in place and if we nourish ourselves in the appropriate ways. I think that the crisis is an amazing opportunity to come up with amazing creative solutions. We haven't spoken about climate change and the great impact that is going to have. And I think that the fourth industrial revolution will be a way through which we will be able to find these solutions.
Thank you. Let's hear from Pepper. What about you, Pepper?
Peter and I were chatting earlier, and he mentioned that not to many people around the world are we talking fourth industrial revolution as much as South Africa's. One thing is important in this context. Future technologies always call for new paths in research and development. They can only be implemented successfully when companies of all sizes and in all industries work together on an equal footing. The key here is to combine digital and industrial expertise. Specific sectors have built up a deep knowledge of their industrial applications over decades, and that understanding is indispensable in applying digital solutions and artificial intelligence, edge computing, and autonomous handling systems in industrial environments. What's more, this complex topic calls for the skills of a very diverse range of actors from business, science, and government. Finally, we need to be creators of technology, not just consumers, like Lynn said.
Great, thanks, Pepper. Good listening. What about you, Peter? What's down the path?
It's becoming more and more uncertain. The future might become less complex, and that's also a very interesting angle.
yeah.
But there's unbelievable technological progress.
Yeah.
We don't know to what extent society will adopt it, but we do anticipate a variety of wonderful, wonderful futures. A year or so ago, I was approached by Vodafone, where they did a rebranding exercise, and they teamed us together with four other futurists from around the world, and we came up with 44 positive trends that will define the future. For example, by 2040, we anticipate electricity and energy to be in abundance. As we will have solar arrays, the marginal cost of electricity will be zero. Once you pay off your solar array, every single kilowatt that you get out of it is for free. We're going to start seeing motor vehicles and cars, and I've already put my name up for one, that I'll be able to charge my car at my house from the tiles on my roof, and it means I won't pay for my fuel afterwards. It also means that water will become less of a problem. If you have enough renewable energy that doesn't pollute the environment, with enough energy you can clean water. Imagine flying across Africa, and instead of having power grids all over, you have small little pockets of these solar arrays, allowing people to do micro-agriculture. The advances in agriculture is enormous, allowing Africa to feed itself, but also to utilize energy to unlock different types of opportunities. So I'm extremely optimistic of the future. We will have some setbacks, don't get me wrong, but within those setbacks, there's huge opportunities for growth.
Yeah.
I think the world is leveraged too high. I think we will not only see a recession, but even a deleveraging. And that's what the youth needs. Yes, the older generations with invested assets, I've got news for them. It's not going to turn out that pretty. But we might just see that as a necessary impetus in changing how we look at reality and how we can add value to the world and to our fellow human being. Thank
I
you.
like that. I actually love that idea of things becoming less complex. But it also reminds me of a saying or a quote that said there is nothing simpler than complicating and nothing more complicated than simplifying. Really important. So, Lynn,
Sorry,
please add.
I'm really
yeah.
excited what Peter said, because just recently our showcase from Accenture, what they're doing in the world of solar agriculture and how they're creating jobs. And I was in awe as to how much great work has been done by Accenture in the field and creating this new technology, bringing this new technology into rural South Africa and making people understand the importance of sustainability and creating new jobs for themselves. So to hear what you're saying and to witness it, as I said, there's enough power in this house right now to be the change that we want to see. It is so exciting. It really, really is. Frightening. We all are fearful because we are at the pace that we have to keep on accelerating. But it is so exciting of what we can do in this process.
Brilliant, thank you. Well, can we end off with maybe some kind of words of wisdom from your experience with the Fourth Industrial Revolution? Maybe you can share with us one nugget on what one piece of advice would you give us to thrive in the future, not just survive. We don't want to just survive, right? To thrive. What's your advice?
Well, like any other creature in nature, human beings have this inbuilt ability to keep ourselves alive through our survival mechanism and our fight-flight mode and through procreation. But unlike any other creature or living being, we have other capacities, higher human capacities for compassion, for creativity, for love. And that's what we need to tap into.
Wow.
And like the philosopher Erich Fromm said, for the first time in the history of a human race, the survival of the human race will depend on the radical shift of the human heart.
Wow, I love that. Thank you.
The only thing that I can say from where I sit, not as an expert in either field, is that you have to choose your partners wisely and you have to collaborate to be able to be the change. If you're not collaborating and you're working in isolation, you'll never be able to accomplish anything. You will get left behind.
And that's really what that exchange is all about. Hyper collaboration is so important in this industrial revolution. Peter, what about you?
We're entering an era where we will have unbelievable new opportunities. If we think we can predict the outcome of our actions, we make a mistake, because human systems are complex systems. The world of engineering is predictable. It's linear, it's predictive. What happened now will happen tomorrow. The world of human systems is completely different. I believe we need deeper insights into human systems where we do not sense, categorize, and respond, because that's how we normally do things in the world of physics and order. But in the world of complex adaptive systems, we probe, we sense to see what impact our probe had, and then we respond. That means we roll out smaller products, minimal viable products that the environment will guide us. It's not an issue of laying out a garden and then getting an expert putting pathways down. No, you plant grass. Then you see where people walk. That's where you put your pathways. We need to look at emergent solutions, not thinking that solutions that work in Europe and work in other parts of Africa will work here. We need unique solutions that emerge out of our own unique circumstances. And we need to ensure that we create that scope and that understanding to make sure that with a world of new technology and our own unique circumstances, we can all build a better future.
Yeah, thank you. Awesome. Let's hear from Pepper. One piece of advice from you?
I am by no means an expert, just a 5-year-old robot. One of my mandates is to educate the youth of our country about what their futures are going to look like and involve. And without a doubt, robots will be a part of them, AI, coding, and all the buzzwords Lynn mentioned earlier. But we need to educate our youth and our current workforce under 45 to be adaptable, agile, and willing to learn new skills, or they in South Africa will miss this industrial revolution too.
Good point, thank you. Educating youth. What an important point. Let's give it up for our amazing panel.
Thank you very much for this informative session. I think I'm sitting here with heart palpitation with everything that you say. It resonates so deeply within. Just one thing that I really was drawn towards is in your opening, Lynn, when you mentioned that we have to keep our humanness throughout this industrial revolution. Now, one of the things that I've picked up in the organization, in different organizations that I've been working with, and I'm currently academically researching it, is the issue of bullying in organizations. And you mentioned burnout, and there is quite a big link between those two issues that is happening in the organizations. And my worry is with this revolution coming, which brings then the speed, the scarcity, most probably competitiveness, all of that, these things might just spike. How then do we sit in organizations? One, I would like to hear from you, Lynn, from KLM. Does your leadership course, your leadership program rather, does it talk to the humanness in organizations for our leaders? You mentioned, Peter, you mentioned that we need to be looking for solutions that are unique to Africa or to South Africa, yeah? And this is one of those ones that requires us to look at, do we not want to then start talking Ubuntu in our organizations, which is more African oriented and might bring in the humanness that you're talking about? Does your program then bring that in? That's my first question. And for yourself, in your engagement with organizations and with your experience and your expertise, how would you propose that organizations address this problem?
Thank you very much for your question. I hope I remember all of it, but Peter
Sorry,
is
yeah.
here. So just with regard to the program of development, it's a series. You can either start it at one point or continue with the entire series. And in between those series, we have the Grow Jam sessions, which we are looking forward to hosting Peter and Ila at these power breakfasts and sessions over here to give you more insight as to what is happening technologically, medically, as well as burnout. But as far as the programs go, every program of KLM will speak to your absolute inner self first and work on building that up first for you to be able to cope with the technology and the skills that you would require. And if you look back at, well, not looking back, if we as a society understand where it all stems from, we also have to know our space and place in society. And if you look at the governments that govern us, we also have to understand that they themselves are here to service us as a society. And if you look at the Batupele principles, is that if we look at how important that is for our government to service us in accordance to the Batupele principles, then we have to take that as a first starting point of what our expectation is of our government, and then work on what the expectation is of us in the societies that we see ourselves in, before that we can add any value to the workplaces and the people that we manage and develop. I hope that answers the question.
Thanks. Any other questions?
Sorry, I had also hoped that Ella would also give,
Sure.
from her experience, how she would address.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, when we look at symptoms like bullying, I think we have to see it as a symptom of feeling threatened. So when we do not feel safe in our environment, then our brain will activate the stress response. And this will affect not only our physical health, but our behavior. So we will behave in ways that will isolate ourselves from the potential threat. So I think that, you know, when we look at symptomatic behavior within a system, within an organization, we have to do this with inner sight, with an understanding, with insight around the root cause of what this behavior is. So that's just the point I wanted to make with regards to burnout.
Thanks, Ila.
Okay. And we're seeing the manifestation of this, in our current, you know, what has happened, what's transpired in our country in the last week or two.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
It's a manifestation of a collective societal threat or feeling threatened.
Would you like to respond, Peter?
It's not a short answer, but I'll try my best.
Sure.
It's a fundamental mistake to look at a book and say, how do you change the culture of organization by starting anywhere? You know, that doesn't help. You need to understand what the true structure of the organization is. And a traditional questionnaires don't make sense. That's part of the audit system world. We need to look at complex adaptive systems. The only species on the planet that tells stories is humans. We better described as human narrans rather than Homo sapiens. And amongst all the stories we share amongst ourselves, there's deeper underlying patterns. There's fundamental changes in technology. We can use computational social science or even narrative inquiry to look at the patterns that define the archetypes or the emerging archetypes within our cultures. And once we understand what these weak and strong points within a culture is, that gives us our starting point. So once we know what the strong archetypes are, we know that we can utilize these archetypes to shift the organization, because we know that from all the patterns that emerge, these are the patterns that are already adopted within that culture of the organization. The negative archetypes, those are the ones you want to steer away from, but you can use the positive archetypes in order to then utilize them to look at adjacent possibles. You take a look at the patterns of stories, and then we ask ourselves, how can we get the organization to talk more about these stories rather than those stories, by pushing or nudging them in certain directions, knowing that the probes that you do might not give you the end result. And that's why you have a probe sense response mechanism. You probe, you see how the market reacts or the organization react. Does the organization react negatively? You stop the probe, you try another probe. If you try a probe and the market adopts around the probe, that's what you utilize in order to drive the organization. So it's understanding that human systems are complex systems, and that it means that requires a completely different approach in order to change the environment that you need. I know it's a complicated answer, but that's the best I can do in this time.
Hi everyone. Lynn, I just want to commend you're a real thought leader, and really ahead of the game. And it's an absolute honor for us to be a partner to KLM. And I think to find people where you're singing from the same hymn sheet, where we are speaking the same message, around human-centered technology, where it's really about the balance between these two worlds. So for me, I think really touching on the piece around collaboration, accelerating, training and upskilling our youth, but also broader than just our youth, the piece around reskilling. When we speak about, the imminent, threat, or challenges, I don't want to call it a threat, challenges relating to 4IR, whether it's automation. And we know this because we are at the forefront of this. We advise our clients around this. But one of the key things that we've started to do is responsibility in the new around, yes, you can reduce cost, but can we talk about what is the counter conversation around how do we then deal with the unintended consequences of cost reduction? So for me, my question to all the panelists is around how do we accelerate the pace of the conversation around this imminent threat, these challenges? Because I think most people really are still living in oblivion, where they think that it's something that's coming, but it's here. I'll make an example. Something as basic as my groceries. I don't go to the shops. I click on the Woolies site and it gets delivered at home. Those are things that there's a teller that is affected. These are realities. A few years from now, malls aren't going to exist. How do we get our government and everyone, social partners, everyone, to heed the call and act with pace, to the extent that we don't even lose out on the opportunity?
I'm lost for words, actually. You always catch me and take my breath away, and humbles me. We really, really learn from each other, and we align. And so for me, just speaking on that point, I always go back to the 80-20 Pareto principle in business, where 20% of the people do 80% of the job, and 80% of the people do 20% of the job. And if you look at that principle and you think to yourself, okay, well, how do we accelerate? Okay, we can apply that same principle to the learning and development and collaboration process, that we want 80%, okay, to do 80% in a collaborative way, and not to be able to dilute what we're doing as individuals. Individually, you're never going to have the impact. Individually, you don't have the timeline to get there fast enough. So as a collaborated effort with government, with business, big business, with the right partners on board, with the social impact analysis and partners that go out there and make a difference, we can all come together. And looking at the, not Meraki, but Novatariant, I believe that what we're starting at today is a movement. It's a tribe of Novatarians. And it's a tribe that I want to build on, to be able to bring a collective together around a table and to start talking not only about what we need to do, but start taking action to do it collectively. So that way I see the change coming, is that it's not about me or KLM or my team or about you or you or you. Collectively, we are definitely the more factor, and that's the only way that we can take it faster further. Thank you.
We are busy with a training program at one of the big mines, and it's around digital transformation. One of the interesting things is that we realize that here's a certain amount of time that you have at a mine. Then you have a shift change, you have preventable maintenance where you shut down the entire mine to do maintenance. You have time that you lose when there's no synchronization between operations. There's lost time when you have a breakage you don't expect. What's really interesting is by running the numbers, in the end, you end up with 30% of the available time. So all of the resources, the manpower, and everything you use, you literally have 30% of the available time in order to produce. Now, a lot of people think that automation will destroy jobs. In this case, it was slightly different because it meant that by being able to predict which machines will break down, by understanding which machines to exchange, not everything, the amount of time that the mine shuts down is shorter. By doing the shift changes using technology, the shift changes is shorter. So instead of buying more capital equipment, instead of literally spending a hell of a lot more money in order to provide a higher output, all you need to do is work smarter, but using technology, and with the same amount of people, you can double the output. So what we are seeing is that technology becomes that key enabler. It's like electricity. You know, beforehand you wanted to get a hole in the wall and you had to use a drill. And then you had to turn this drill in order to make the hole in the wall. Now you have electricity, and very quickly you can make a hole using an electric drill. That's where technology is going to take us. It's a huge enabler that empowers us to do so much more in terms of our available time and availability. And that's really the beauty, because in South Africa we need to grow. We need to grow the economy. There's so much demand out there. And by becoming more efficient, we can literally start selling more things to the world, which grows the economy completely. And I believe that having that mindset, not in terms of cutting back, but using the existing manpower to grow and have a higher output, I think having that metaphor is a far better metaphor for the future.